Excellent. Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. It is our January, February, March, April. What are we in? May. So we are on our fourth webinar for this year. We do not do webinars over December, January, because that is mad time for everyone in the museum industry and aquariums and zoos and botanical gardens and national parks. Everybody has a bit of crazy time over Christmas. So we don't do webinars over December, January, but the rest of the year we are here with a smile and sharing some amazing news and interesting topics and meeting some interesting people. So I know that most of you here do know who we are, but for those who are watching the YouTube recording, VISSA is a group of people. We are the Visitor Studies and Interpretation group of South Africa, but we are now called, what are we called now, Robin? We've actually changed our name slightly. Anyway, we're the Visitor Studies and Interpretation group of South Africa, and we bring together all the professionals within South Africa who are in the interpretation field. So anyone in a free choice learning center who is involved with the public, explaining the heritage, cultural or natural heritage to the public. It's not translation from one language to another, which some people seem to think. It is more a case of making a heritage site accessible through making it easier to understand, telling stories, showing exhibits, showing artifacts, that kind of thing. So anyone who's involved in that, we would like them to join us. I'd just also like to share that we've been going for over 10 years now. We started off as a group of 5 who had a view of having this amazing group who would make interpretation more visible to the South African people and our bosses. And it's grown into over 400 members. And we are quite well known now. We'd still like to be more well known. So if you would like to share our details with any of your colleagues and friends, we'd appreciate that. We do have a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a LinkedIn page, and a YouTube channel that has most of our coffee chats that happen monthly and our annual workshops. So lots to share, lots to learn, and we are still learning as we go along. So welcome, and welcome to Chris Patton, who is our speaker today. I was quite amazed when he told me all these amazing things that he can actually share with us, because he's actually been working at SANParks for over 30 years. And he's lived in Kruger and the Garden Route National Parks. So a very lucky man, a very fortunate man. He's been able to see a lot of things firsthand. He's unfortunately also an unfortunate man in a way, because he had an unfortunate incident in 1990 as a student. He fell off Table Mountain and became paralyzed, excuse me. But through this, I think he has learned a lot, and he can now share a lot with us, because 36 years down the line, he's still alive and kicking, still doing very well. Actually, so well, let me share with you that he's done some amazing things. He's actually represented South Africa in lawn bowls at the Commonwealth Games. So he didn't just say, oh, I had an accident and I'm now going to sit in my house and do nothing. He said, I'm going to show the world that I'm still fighting, I can still do a lot. And here he is teaching us more about what we can actually do to improve our tourism sites. So Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for giving up your time. We can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Great. Thank you, Heidi, and welcome everyone. Thank you for listening to me today. I'm just going to share my screen. And find the presentation, which we found just now. And then go from beginning. Can everybody see the screen? The presentation working?
Yep.
Super. Okay, so I'm going to be talking to you today about universal access in South African national parks. And as Heidi shared, I'm a paraplegic, a wheelchair user, having fallen off Table Mountain many moons ago. And I know in the audience we've got a couple of blind listeners, so I'm actually going to take time out to audio describe the pictures that are on the screen to make the visual world verbal. That's part of something we'll talk about a little later in the presentation called audio description. So Jeremy, on the screen is two slides, one from the Kgodumodumo Dinosaur Interpretation Center, which opened in June last year. It's showing a massive chamber with a really large brontosaurus type dinosaur in a gold and red color. And then it's got a skeleton of that same dinosaur mounted on the wall in the background. And then there's a whole lot of smaller running dinosaurs on a plinth next to me in my wheelchair, next to one of the interpretation displays, which I'm reading. And next to that is a picture from Table Mountain National Park with a relief map, and it's got your good self and Shakila when we went there last year with one of the guides from Table Mountain Aerial Cable Car Company. And the two of you are feeling your way around the relief map up there on the top of the summit of Table Mountain. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little later in the presentation. So now I'm preaching to the converted because you're all sort of students of interpretation. But why is interpretation important? Visitor interpretation can use personal methods such as guides or interactions with staff, or can use non-personal methods, including information brochures, on-site signage and plaques, dedicated interpretation centers, websites, and audio guides. These days, digital media, virtual reality, augmented reality, social media, and smartphone apps can modernize the experience and reach. But interpretation depends on the audience and the site's nature and the desired visitor experience. But it's critical that interpretation is accessible to all people, regardless of their physical, sensory, or cognitive ability and their travel companions. So, of course, SANParks, the national parks of South Africa, are in outdoor nature environments, and that tends to present some physical challenges to being able to offer interpretation. So there's a number of pictures on the screen here, Jeremy. The first is from a view of Table Mountain taken from the lower cable station, and it's got a cable car along the cable descending or ascending up towards the mountain top. Then next to that is a picture of an interpretive boardwalk at Mapungubwe National Park, which is set in riverine forest on the banks of the Limpopo River. So there's a ramped boardwalk going up, and it rises about 5 meters above the ground. It's so high, I've been on that boardwalk and have had a herd of elephant pass underneath me, which was quite a sort of spiritual experience. But yeah, obviously a challenge to get up amongst the trees, especially for people with physical disabilities like myself. Then next to that is a picture from Twereferin in Kalahari, where you've got a red sand dune. And there's a bird hide at the top of the dune overlooking a waterhole. But to get to that was a challenge for all people, because to walk through sand up a dune is quite a difficult experience. But for a person in a wheelchair, completely impossible. So the park has constructed a concrete pathway that goes on top of the sand and allows wheelchair users and other mobility impaired guests to get to that. And of course, a hide is a great interpretive facility, because on one side you're looking out of the viewing slot at nature unfolding in front of you. But then the back of a hide is an excellent location to put up displays, very often with identification guides to some of the wildlife you might see, but also various other interpretation messages about the park and the wildlife you'll see there. In the middle row of pictures are 3 taken from the Agulhas Lighthouse and the southern tip of the African continent, where the 2 oceans meet, the Indian and Atlantic Oceans. Now, these pictures were taken several years ago, and that facility has been there for a while. But just last month, a new interpretation site was opened at Agulhas National Park, and they've revamped the lighthouse experience, which was always a lighthouse museum. So there's a lot of stuff there that I've been involved in providing the content, but I haven't actually been there to see the new center yet. But hopefully I'll get there in the next couple of months. But the pictures, in terms of describing it to you, the one on the left has a picture of the Agulhas Lighthouse, and then there's a boardwalk descending down, but the direct route has steps that are too steep for a wheelchair to use, so the boardwalk branches off to the right and staggered and snakes around the slope to get up to where the lighthouse and the Lighthouse Museum are located. And then the middle picture is the boardwalk taken from the other side, looking out over the Indian Ocean, and it's a rocky shoreline, the type of habitat that a person with a mobility impairment wouldn't be able to sort of move along, but the boardwalk has facilitated that. And then it's got a picture at the sort of actual point of the meeting point geographically of the two oceans, where a person can stand, or in my case, sit on the line between the two oceans and say that you're at that geographic point on the planet where two oceans meet, which is quite a sort of special occasion. Then the bottom row of pictures has four images, all taken from Akrabi's Falls National Park, which the Akrabi's Falls is where the Orange River tumbles and cascades over a waterfall and down through a gorge, quite a sheer gorge. And when I first went there as a student in the 1990s, it was very inaccessible. A wheelchair couldn't get anywhere near it to be able to experience the sort of scenery, dramatic scenery of the waterfall, but also to benefit from the interpretation signage that goes with the experience. But now they've constructed a heavy-duty boardwalk made out of railway sleepers that allows wheelchairs to get down to viewing platforms. There's 2 or 3 viewing platforms, and there's a whole extensive network of boardwalks that allow people to walk to the falls in safety and enjoy the views, and with that goes interpretation experiences. Then it's got a couple of other pictures of some of the first wheelchair users to get onto the boardwalk. Yeah, if you can picture that scene. So moving on to physical access, Golden Gate Highlands National Park, where the Khudumudumu Dinosaur Interpretation Center was opened last June. Now, the one immediate challenge from accessibility point of view is that the parking lot is down at the bottom, and the interpretation center, which is a large building, is elevated at some 30 meters above where the parking lot is located. So the direct route from there is to walk up steps, but of course that isn't accessible to someone with mobility impairment. So they built a secondary route, which is a wide, probably about 2.5 meters wide, bricked pathway that snakes around and goes between outdoor dinosaur sculptors and makes access sort of part of the experience, part of the journey. Then in the center itself, the middle row has a series of photos showing how a person inside the center will transition between different levels through a series of hairpin bend slopes with landing platforms along the way to break the gradient. And all the way, there's interpretation signage along the walls of the center. There's also a railing that's there to support people who are unsteady on their feet, elderly visitors, and others with ambulatory issues. And what's not visible in the photograph is that the floor surface is fitted with slip-resistant surface so that people aren't in danger of toppling over. And then there's a picture of me coming down the slope sitting next to one of the display panels with a whole lot of fossils that people are encouraged to sort of touch, because as we'll hear later on, tactile exhibits are very important, especially to visually impaired, but also to young children and all guests to get an idea of textures and feeling. And then there's a series of 3 photographs along the bottom, which show the outside of the building at the building's exit. And the pathway snakes around and goes through a cycad garden with a whole lot of cycads are ancient plants, older than the dinosaurs themselves, that still exist today, and they've got some planted there and some more dinosaur sculptures. The building itself has these massive glass windows, which are a one-way glass reflecting, and then the building itself has been built as part of the environment. So it's actually got grass growing on its roof. So it doesn't stick out as an eyesore to the surrounding environment, sort of blends into the sort of rolling hills of the Maluti Mountains. And then it's got, I described the sort of concrete path to get into the entrance of the building up above, but in exiting the building, there's a boardwalk that again sort of snakes around to break the gradient and goes along a little stream that runs next to the building and slopes down to a coffee shop and restaurant at the bottom of the building. So hopefully you've been able to get a sort of mental image of that as I've described it. And then I've said physical access always has to be within reason. So this next picture, and then there's an exclamation mark, an @ sign, a hashtag, and an exclamation mark, and a little smiley face of someone laughing, because it's got a picture from one of the provincial parks in KwaZulu-Natal, a very steep slope, and it's got like a road sign, triangular warning sign, and it's got a picture of a wheelchair speeding down a slope with a crocodile and its mouth open at the bottom of the hill, just waiting for these wheelchairs to run into the crocodile's mouth. And it says Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife on its board. So that's just a bit of humor that signage and interpretation that has a humorous bent can always be more impactful and more memorable for the people that are seeing it. But I've talked a bit about physical access. Now I'd like to talk a bit about blind and visual impairment, tactile exhibits, and especially on audio description. Some bullet points. Braille signage is important. Audio description, audio tours and safaris. For those of you who don't know, audio description is the art of making the visual world verbal. So it takes, for blind people who can't see the images or visions or landscapes in front of them, a person provides a narration, a dialogue that gives them an insight into what is there. Now, with blind people, some blind people are blind from birth, so they don't have a visual memory. But most people lose their sight as they go through life and do have a memory of light and vision that sort of shapes their memory. So it's important to be able to let them connect with these memories through providing a description through audio form. So what we did a couple of years ago in SANParks is we went on orchestrated tours around Table Mountain National Park and around Kruger National Park and made audio recordings of all the sites and activities that we went on that will now be downloaded and transferred through a smartphone app that is downloadable for free, so that people can have this information and lock it into their phones and get a sort of audio described journey through the parks. So this is kind of the way of the future, opening up doors for the visually impaired. Something that's also very important for all people, but especially the visually impaired, is having sound booths. We have one in Addo Elephant National Park where you go in and you're able to touch buttons and it plays the sort of sound effects of the various animals that are found in the park. And that's an incredibly enriching experience. Something we've got in the Dinosaur Center is interactive electronic question boxes where you press buttons and you get you prompted with various questions. It's aimed at creating an interpretive experience for children, but it's something that's interactive, and because it's got sound effects, it's also very useful for visually impaired guests. And things like rocks, fossils, animal remains, or models of the animals make great tactile exhibits. And for people who can't see, it gives them a great opportunity to use their fingers, because their fingertips become their eyes, and they're able to sort of connect with many of those artifacts and things, and get a much richer experience of what the Interpretation Center is offering. But plants with shape, texture, and scent are also something important to promote. So we've got a lot of indigenous nurseries in our national parks that offer great accessibility opportunity for all people. And as we saw in the opening slide, relief maps are a very powerful mechanism of allowing people to sort of connect with the landscape and layout. And as we'll see just now, in a very powerful image, allow people with a memory of places to really connect with them. So the next slide that I've moved on to is called the pros and cons of Braille. Now, Braille is a very powerful communication method for the visually impaired. It was invented in 1824 by a young French boy called Louis Braille, and it allows people through raised dots to use their fingertips to be able to read. So incredibly powerful and useful for those, and this whole library, the South African Library for the Blind in Grahamstown, houses quite an extensive body of literature of Braille information. But the thing is, only 6% of blind South Africans can read Braille, because modern day we've got things like smartphones and audio recording devices that they didn't have 200 years ago. And because a lot of blind people lose sight later in life, to start having to learn a new language is always a difficult thing, and to have to do so when you have to sort of rely on little dots and impressions that your fingers are picking up is quite a difficult thing. So I think a lot of blind people are now leaning more heavily on modern technology, which they didn't have. But having said that, don't underestimate the value of Braille. And we do have Braille displays in several of our parks. We've spoken about the one in the Dinosaur Center, and the top left picture on this slide has a picture of some fossils, which visitors are encouraged to feel. It's actually fossilized dung. And then there's a whole explanation there about the display. And I'm actually reading at the top there, it's the cast of a sketch of dinosaur eggs. So I think I'm confusing it with another display there, which had fossilized dung. The second picture on the right is a close-up of what I was describing earlier with some of the small running two-legged dinosaurs, and then a display, and it's got me in my wheelchair up close next to the signboard feeling the Braille. And the bottom picture is from a trail in Kruger National Park. It's a lady many of us know well, Shakila Maharaj. She's reading the Braille signage on the Rhino Trail at Bergendal in Kruger National Park. And then there's a fossil trail in Karoo National Park, which has a Braille signage there too. And moving on to some scenes from the Dinosaur Center, I spoke about those those touch push action boxes, interactive boxes. There's a series of questions. You push the buttons and it verbally gives you answers and sound effects if you get the answers right. And it's got a little cartoon dinosaur who's sort of conducting things. If you get things wrong, it tells you to try again. But if you get it right, there's fireworks that go off, and there's a big hoo-ha. So very great for sort of engaging little children with young children with dinosaurs and that sort of display, but can also have further impact as well. In this next slide, I've entitled "I Feel It in My Fingers," and it's got some scenes from various parks with blind people being able to sort of use their fingers to feel artifacts. And the top two pictures feature a young gentleman called Michael Kamala. Those pictures were taken over 20 years ago when I was still living and working in Kruger National Park. And the top one shows an elephant foot. That's obviously, it's a mold of an elephant foot. But Michael, who grew up in a rural community around the park, had sort of little or no opportunity to visit the park until this occasion, which was one of the International Day for People with Disabilities. We invited a lot of school children with disabilities into the park, and to see the expression on his face is something that stayed with me for life. He got an insight into things that had always been nebulous concepts to him, like the sort of sheer size and shape of an elephant. But I think one of the more powerful images was we put a vulture feather in his hand. And he'd grown up hearing about birds and flight and not really understanding what that meant. But when he had this vulture feather in his hand and he could feel how light it was like a sort of mic drop moment for him, a realization as to how a bird could possibly become airborne with the use of feathers and wings. And we obviously took more time to explain to him in greater detail the process. So this is the kind of sort of hands-on interpretation that is impossible, that is imperative to sort of get through messages to blind people who've been blind since birth. Then on the bottom row of the pictures is a picture from our tour, Germany. It's got Shakila with Owen at the Buffelsfontein Visitor Center in Table Mountain National Park. And those are fossilized whale bones. So the rib bone is at the bottom, but then there's the whale scapula, the whale's shoulder bone. You might not think of a whale as something that has a shoulder bone, but it's a mammal, and it does. And Owen's guiding Shakila's hand onto the shoulder bone so that she can get an idea of the size and shape of this bone. And then we've got another picture of her in the Kruger Museum in Skukuza, where she's getting very intimate with James Stevenson Hamilton, who was the first warden of the park, and the Kruger Museum and the adjoining Stevenson Hamilton Memorial Library are both named in his honor. And the sculpture was made by Stevenson Hamilton's wife, who, until Shakila got familiar with him, I think was probably the woman who was most familiar with his facial features. Then moving on, still in interpretation or museum setups, useful tactile exhibits. We've got one from the Makala Interpretation Center in Makala National Park near Kimberley. And it's got mounted on a sort of display. It's got all different animal pelts. So visually, you can see what the animal skins are, but it also gives you the opportunity to feel the different textures. It's got a giraffe on the left, then it's got a zebra, and then various antelopes, springbok, wildebeest, eland, a number of them there. There's a lot of different antelope species in the park. And then it's got some of their hooves that are inverted and facing upright. And you've got an opportunity to sort of use your hands to sort of trace the shape of the different footprints and spoor that the antelope will leave. And then mounted on the wall, there's some sort of written information about the various antelopes there, with some skulls of the different horn shapes of some of the antelope mounted above that. But then right next to it in the interpretation center are a lot of skulls of the animals there that, again, a person can pick up and feel. It's got a buffalo skull, hartebeest with its lyre-shaped horns, kudu with its spiral horns, then one with the curved horns, that'll be a sable antelope. So these are all different types of antelope with different shaped horns. In the background, there's a diorama with some of the animals found in the park: an aardvark, a springbuck, a Cape vulture, one of my colleagues standing there, and then some other interpretation displays. And then below that are two scenes from the Rhino Interpretation Center in Kruger National Park. There's two blind girls from a school group we were there with, feeding the mold of a baby rhinoceros. And then there's a picture of one of my colleagues with a blind gentleman, getting him to feel the different types of rhino dung, because the black rhinoceros is a browser, so it eats twigs and leaves, but the white rhino eats grass. So its dung has a different texture and feel. And there's my colleague is there with the two blind people, a lady and a man, and they're getting to feel the different textures of the dung up close and personal there. And then we come to a picture of you, Jeremy, when you are having great delight in being able to feel the relief map on top of Table Mountain. And for the rest of you in the audience who don't know, Jeremy grew up in Cape Town, and as a young boy, he would often walk on the mountain and look up at Table Mountain. So he was quite familiar with that. But now in his later life, he's lost his sight. But being able to reconnect with that mountain through the relief map was quite a sort of emotional experience for him. And I'm sure at the end of the talk, he'll share with us what a sort of moving experience it was, because it's a very accurate and realistic recreation of the Cape Peninsula, of what Table Mountain, how it rises up from the earth about 1 kilometer above sea level. And he was able to sort of trace all the ravines and gullies that he knew as a young child. And this next slide is entitled "What's in a Name?" And that's quite important if you're putting in facilities that are universally accessible. You don't want to create a stigma. If you call it a sort of a trail for the disabled, or a braille trail, or a wheelchair trail, that creates a stigma that means that other people don't necessarily want to use that facility. So you've got to try and be creative and come up with sort of names that encourage all people to experience the environment, perhaps experiencing the environment through other senses. So we've got a discovery trail in Addo that takes people staying there into the sort of succulent thicket, Albany thicket of that part of the world. The sort of dense nature of the habitat that sort of actually was what saved the elephant from extinction, because most of them were shot out because they kept raiding the farmers' crops. But because the Albany thicket is so impenetrable, yeah, so there's a little boardwalk tour of about 1 kilometer that takes you sort of through the thicket, and there's various interpretation displays along the way. And as you can see in the bottom left picture, there's an elderly lady being pushed by presumably her sort of daughter or a carer. She's able to get right up close to the interpretation displays. Other examples where name is important: you've got a fossil trail one of the Braille wheelchair-friendly trails in Karoo National Park. The one in Kruger, instead of calling it a Braille trail, you call it the Birkendal Rhino Trail. So yeah, creating names around places is important. There's another one in the center there that's called Meander to Your Heart's Content, and it's got a whole lot of information there. That trail is called the Mushroom Meander, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. Then I want to mention a bit about the importance of guides and interpreters, especially for people with disabilities. We've got a picture there of one of my colleagues taking a blind lady down to a lakeside in Silvermine in Table Mountain National Park. And on the right of that is in that same rhino center in Kruger National Park, where the blind lady's been guided by a colleague to a rhino rubbing post, so they can feel the different textures of how it's rough in parts. That helps get the mud off the rhino, but it's been smooth from just constant wear through the rhinos rubbing against that post. Then there's a picture of Shakila being guided by one of my colleagues up the ramp into the Skukuza or the Kruger Museum at Skukuza. And on the right, bottom right, is a picture from the Skukuza Indigenous Nursery, where there's a wetland boardwalk, and there's a knobthorn acacia there. So if you can picture the trunk of a tree, very straight, but covered in all these little knobbly things, and hence why it gets the name knobthorn. So it's a type of thorn tree, and it's got a sort of parasitic succulent that's wrapped itself around the tree. So Muriel, my colleague, Muriel Beloy, she's guiding Shakila to be able to feel the trunk of that tree and get a far richer experience of what the environment is like, rather than just relying on audible descriptions, being able to sort of feel with their fingers. Sign language interpreter is very important for people who are deaf. They communicate not through sound, but through sign language. So we've got my colleague in the Rhino Museum on the one side of the display with the teacher, and on the other side is about 10 deaf children. And my colleague is sort of providing an interpretive experience, and the teacher is taking what he says and translating it into sign language so that the children can follow him. So having staff members who can speak a bit of sign language or communicate in sign language rather than speak it is an important asset, but otherwise sort of connect with teachers or practitioners who are able to sort of provide that service. Now this one, the next slide is on cognitive disabilities. And the first bullet point at the top says Down syndrome and other cognitive disability children respond well to hands-on interpretive experiences. Interpreting for persons with cognitive disabilities requires a shift from conventional interpretation methods to more functional and personal communication, also involving a lot of repetition and simplicity, as memory and attention spans are restricted and comprehension and information processing very different. Effective communication in this context involves simplifying language, providing extra time, and using multimodal communication, such as pictures or gestures, to ensure understanding rather than just delivering a message. And then there's 3 pictures along the bottom of groups of children with disabilities that we've taken into Kruger National Park. The central picture has a lot of children in bright orange shirts, and they're at the Kruger National Park Canine Center, spelled capital K, 9, the number, but a play on words for the Canine Center. That's where we have our support dogs that help in encounter poaching and tracking poachers and other sort of service-related issues that the dogs perform. and where I said up above, it's really beneficial if you can give them some hands-on experience. So we've got two of the children with brooms and mops, and they're helping sort of clean up the kennels of the dogs. And yeah, they absolutely loved it, getting involved hands-on. And then the bottom right is a picture of a lot of Down syndrome children, and we took them to the rhino bomas at Skukuza, where a lot of rhino that are that have been involved in poaching incidents and have been being rehabilitated back to health are there, or in some instances the bomas there are used to sort of sell surplus stock to other parks or zoos around the world. So yeah, there's a series of wildlife bomas in Skukuza, and being able to take the children there is a very sort of interactive, hands-on experience. So there's the children there, there's a couple of my colleagues, one an honorary ranger, and then there's me in my wheelchair sitting at the front. And the children are sort of very warm, very touchy-feely, but respond well to that sort of interpretive experience. Then coming back just a bit more on physical displays, very often you've got displays in interpretation centers that are on raised platforms, so it's important to provide ramped access onto those. The top left is from the Lenong, which is the Tswana word for vulture. There's a vulture colony in Marakele National Park, and you drive up to the top of the mountain and you get out from your vehicle, and there's a display platform that you can get onto there. There's a recreation of picture that we spoke about earlier from Addo, with a lady in a wheelchair being pushed by a carer, up close to interpretation displays. There's another picture from me in the Dinosaur Center showing how the pitch and angle of displays is important to be able to access them in a wheelchair. And then the bottom right-hand picture is also in the Dinosaur Center, and I think it's quite a clever little adaptation, because a lot of small children or little people, height challenged people, are unable to sort of get to displays that they're too high. So in the Dinosaur Center, they've got mobile steps that allow such visitors to be able to sort of step onto those steps to get elevated, to be able to sort of access and read or touch what's on the display. So that's just some adaptations there. And then I've called this next slide Making Sense of Other Senses. And some of the images are taken from Skukuza Indigenous Nursery, some are from Kirstenbosch Botanic Gardens. But the power of sort of the scent of plants or the taste of plants is a picture of Muriel giving Shakila the leaf of the pepperbark tree, a special tree that you get in Kruger National Park. And she was able to sort of take the tree in her mouth, first smell it, what it smelled like, and then taste the peppery smell of the leaf. And that's all an enriching experience. Then the bottom right-hand picture there is one from, it's of you, Jeremy, in our walk along the Willis Walk at Boulder's Penguin Colony in Table Mountain National Park. And you're leaning over the rail, and there's a whole lot of penguins just meters away from you. And the thing that you were very struck by was their sound, the braying sound as they were sort of just sitting there, but also the strong smell of guano. And although it was quite a pungent smell, it just made the experience that much richer for you. And I'm sure you'll also maybe want to comment on that at the end. And then when I first gave this talk, it was to some colleagues down here in Garden Route. So there's just some examples of accessible interpretation trails here in Garden Route. The one is from here in Knysna, between Knysna and Plettenberg Bay, the Garden of Eden.
It's interrupt you, Chris, but we're running out of time. Could we possibly go to questions soon?
We can. Well, this is the second last slide.
Okay, great.
So it's that one there, and then this one is also from the George Botanic Gardens, Mushroom Meander, some interpretation signage and just some of the routes, compacted earth, and some boardwalks across some of the streams there, but provides a very accessible experience for visitors in wheelchairs. So yeah, I think that's wrapped it up. Yeah, sorry if I've gone on too long with having to audio describe things, but hopefully the audience has still enjoyed it.
Thanks very much, Chris. I hate to stop you. I really do, because it's fascinating stuff, and it's so nice to see the pictures. And funny enough, the descriptions actually really help as well, because I mean, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but those 1,000 words, or those few words that you use to describe those pictures, made it even richer for us who can see. So I think those audio descriptions are really, really worthwhile, not just for people who may have issues being able to see.
And I think they are, and if I can just apologize to Jeremy and any other blind listeners in the audience, I was probably rushing it a bit and not going into the full detail, which was something that I was aware of time. But yeah.
Well, I hope it was useful and helpful for those, especially for Jeremy. If not, please feel free to speak to Chris afterwards, and I'm sure he'll be happy to explain some more. But yeah, we always like to have questions. We always like to make sure that everyone can ask more about the interesting topic that we're talking about. So would anyone like to either speak up or write in the chat or put a little cartoon hand up or anything? Judy says, that was great. Thank you so much, Chris. And I love the chapter you shared for the interpretation book. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Was that the new interpretation book that's still to come out?
Yeah, it hasn't been published yet. And that reminds me that I still need to do some technical stuff in terms of giving permission for the publishers to use my article. So thanks, Judy. I will get onto that.
It wasn't meant as a reminder at all, but I did enjoy your chapter. And just a heads up to everybody, we're producing a chapter on interpretation across multiple different areas. So next year it'll be ready. We'll share it then. Thank you so much, Chris. That was great.
Super. Thank you.
We look forward to it, Judy. Oh, we have questions. Okay, who should we start with? Renee, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, yes, good day. Thanks, Heidi. Chris, I see you've done quite a bit of work since we last spoke. I think we last spoke about almost 10 years ago. I'm just very curious to know, this is a lot of work that you've been doing, and a lot of work is still required, for example, within Cape Town, because I'm based here. I'm concerned about the Kirstenbosch Gardens access to the Boomslang. It's apparently there's just a meter of dirt, a pathway to get onto the bridge. And then also recently at Table Mountain, they opened up another boardwalk. But there are some issues around it. Are you the only one that's going around monitoring and checking up on these things? Are there more persons employed? And if we do have issues, can we email them to you? Who could we contact?
Well, let's discuss those. You mentioned the Boomslang. So that's at Kirstenbosch Botanic Gardens. So I've got no connection to that. It was a wonderful facility. I sort of went there maybe 10, 15 years ago last. So I would direct inquiries or concerns around that to Kirstenbosch itself. The Table Mountain Boardwalk actually sort of came as a bit of a shock to me. And when I sort of last week, I got contacted by the sort of media officer of Table Mountain National Park asking for some input into accessibility and SANParks policies and approach to accessibility, which I provided. But then I said to my colleagues, this is the first I'm hearing about this boardwalk. Why wasn't involved? And Megan, the park manager, who I know well, she used to be the park manager here in Knysna, and before that she'd worked in Addo and Mountain Zebra. I know her well. She said no, her boss, the regional manager, had promised or had told her that he had extended an invite to myself and one of my other colleagues.
There we go.
We didn't get that. So, but getting back to your question, you can contact me, Renee. But for operational issues in the park, we'll have to get on to people in the park to address them. But having your feedback will be critical, because the employees working in the park themselves are not necessarily people with disabilities or sort of familiar with the things, so they need to be guided by people like us who are wheelchair users to what they can do to improve it still.
Yeah, I have referred them to Anthony and also encouraged them to do sensitivity training. Can I email you the issues, because I have been emailing. So who does Kirstenbosch Gardens then fall under? Isn't that SANParks as well?
It's SANBI, the South African National
Botanical.
Biodiversity Institute.
Oh,
Yeah,
biodiversity.
so it's a different body entirely.
Okay, but can I talk to you on email about both Table Mountain and Kirstenbosch, and possibly the right people that we could make contact with? Because no
Yeah.
one was consulted. Apparently, when I spoke to the engineer at Table Mountain, he said, "Oh well, they didn't think about it. So they've got the boardwalk, but the raw mountain terrain before that and after that is extremely steep. So we're hoping to rectify it, but we need someone to be consulting with us or with a person with a disability, a wheelchair user." Right, so you've given me permission to email you then.
Good stuff. No, that'll be great, and
Okay.
yeah, we can escalate
Excellent.
it to the park. That'll be brilliant.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
Renee. Erica, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please. Thanks. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Good to see you again. I noticed that you've got sign language interpreters, and I wondered what kind of communication accommodations you've got for people with hearing impairment that don't use sign language.
So when I said we got sign language interpreters, that was maybe a bit misleading. Those we invited a group of children who were deaf, came to the park with our honorary rangers, and their teachers were providing the sign language interpretation. So our colleagues were talking, and you would have seen in the picture that standing next to my colleague was a teacher from the school who had that sign language ability to be able to translate for the children. I know in the past in Kruger National Park, some of my colleagues had mastered a little bit of sign language, but I don't know if they are still working there. I'm no longer. I'm now based in Garden Route National Park, so I don't get to Kruger much itself. But it's also the kind of thing that you can't only do as sort of as a once-off. You've got to sort of invest in it and live it. I think all accessibility issues are almost a lifestyle issue, and it's often quite difficult for locations to consistently provide that sort of service. So there has to be a bit of involvement from people within the sort of hearing impaired sector to provide that skill. But again, as I said to Renee just now, the parks themselves don't necessarily have the skills, so they need to rely on interaction and communication from the disability sector to sort of guide the parks how best they can provide access to such visitors, to try and encourage them to come and get over any sort of stumbling blocks there are there preventing their access.
May I contact you and start a discussion around ways in which it could be made accessible?
100%, yeah.
Great.
That'd be great.
Thanks. I'll get hold of your contact details. Thank you.
Cool.
Excellent. Thanks. Chris, would you mind, or Robin, would you mind putting Chris's email into the chat just so that everyone can Chris, if that's okay.
That's fine, no problem.
If you could put the email address into the chat box, then we can put everyone in touch. Anthony, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, thanks. Chris, I've been a wheelchair user for 2 years less than you have, but I don't think our paths have crossed, which is quite remarkable. I work for the Quad Para Association Western Cape, so it's good to see, and hopefully we can work together. Just, I know that you only had a set time for the presentation. I think that accommodation within the parks is also something which would be really interesting to hear about. I know that a lot of work has been done over the years and improvements made, so it'd be great if perhaps on another time we could unpack some of the accessible accommodation in the parks and how that all works. And then just to comment on what Renee raised, and it really is a frustration when something is done with lots of fanfare and a lot of media coverage, only to find that it's actually not what it says on the jar,
tin.
and it's not actually it's not actually accessible. And so from we now know it's going to cost a whole lot more if it can ever get done. So yeah, not to moan, we were pleased that it has been done and that our needs were considered, but obviously a lot of work still needs to be done. So if Renee is happy, I'd also include me in that conversation, please. We'd love to work together. But then also just to commend the work that has been done, because it is remarkable. And yeah, I always use Table Mountain as an example when it comes to access. As a user of a very large motorized chair, the last place that I kind of think I should be able to move around is the top of Table Mountain, but I can, and that speaks to a lot of what can be achieved with the right attitude and the right approach. So yeah, thanks. Nice to hear more about accommodation next time. Thanks, Chris.
Good.
I'm loving the connections. I actually wouldn't mind if everyone who is a part of an association or who is involved in accessibility in any way, if you'd like to share your contact details with me, I'd actually like to share it with all of our members so that they can actually contact you directly and ask your advice, because I'm sure there is a lot to be done within all the facilities within Cape Town and the rest of South Africa. And the best people to ask are those who actually have to deal with the issues of trying to use the ramps that are too steep or use the railings that are too high or whatever it is. So please do send me your contact details. You can send it to VISSAinterpretation@gmail.com. That would be great. Our last question, we're running over time, but our last question, please, Jeremy, go ahead.
You're muted, Jeremy.
No, that better?
Much
you hear me?
better, yeah.
Oh,
I
sorry
can.
about that. Sorry, I don't often make that mistake. I just wanted to say congratulations. That was an outstanding presentation. And thank you for the audio description. You did a very good job. I know time was short, but I got it. I really got it. Just one little thing, and the picture of me feeling Table Mountain. So I had very poor vision as a youngster, and I did clamber all over the mountain. It's true, but I had an imperfect understanding of the shape of the mountain, other than the front shape, which everybody knows. You know, Devil's Peak on the left, and the Flat Top Mountain in the middle, and Lion's Head on the right. So I got that. But what the expression on my face is about me suddenly realizing how deep the mountain was from front to back. You know, I was 62 years old last year when you took that picture, and for the first time getting it, how deep, how the shape was different from what I had thought. And it brings in the issue of tactile experience, how important it is to allow. Very often, it means you sometimes have to break the rules. Let the guy across the rope. Let us get across the rope and feel something that other people perhaps can't feel, in order for us to get the best experience. So well done. That was a brilliant show. Thank you.
Thank you. You enjoyed it, Jeremy, and it's good to hear your voice. And yeah, we will continue to communicate.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Sure.
we are unfortunately at 3 minutes past 4. So we will have to call it an end, but this is not the end of the accessibility conversation. We will have more talks. We will hopefully actually do a workshop in the future. I'd like to have a chat to the people who send me their email addresses so that we can do a workshop, because I think it really is important to make this a topic for all free choice learning centers, to make it more visible, to make it more talked about. And if we can get more staff trained in how to actually make the experience more accessible, that would be fantastic. So please, please do send your email addresses. Anthony, I'm quickly going to write your email address so that I don't lose that either. gm@qawc.org. Fantastic. So thank you very much, Chris, for sharing all of those pictures with us and all of your experience.
It's a pleasure, Heidi. I just want to confirm that the talk will ultimately be on YouTube, so we can share it with other people who maybe weren't able to join us today.
Yes. Yeah, the talk
Brilliant.
normally the recording normally comes out about 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. But just keep an eye on the YouTube channel. There's also a lot there from the last, I think from the last 5 years even. There are recordings of all sorts of interesting talks. We had another accessibility discussion, I think it was 2 years ago, which is also very, very interesting if you'd like to go and have a look at that. So thank you to everyone for spending your time with us, and thank you for your questions. Thank you, Chris, for sharing your experiences, and hopefully we will see you all next month. We have, let me quickly have a look at what it is. We have Nari Blankenberg from Creative Repair Studio coming to talk to us about implementing interpretive plans in Africa. So please, there's lots more to come. Come join us, come share with us, come ask questions especially, and please keep in touch via email and social media too. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.